Synopsis: in 1968 Alabama, a younger boy goes to dwell together with his grandmother following the dying of his dad and mom in Chicago. Slowly, the boy will get cheered up together with his grandmother, shopping for him a pet mouse whom he names Daisy. At some point, Charlie goes to purchase a field of nails to coach Daisy and to construct a home for her as properly. The boy is approached by a witch making an attempt to lure him with a snake and a caramel. However, the grandmother calls him and the witch disappears. After telling the grandmother concerning the encounter, the boy learns that the witches are in reality actual. She says a witch cursed her greatest pal Alice into spending the remainder of her life as a rooster. The grandmother says that witches by no means depart as soon as they discover a baby. Frantically, they determine to remain in a close-by resort, the place her cousin Eston is the chief chef. Whereas there, grandmother tells the boy how you can inform a witch from an odd girl. Actual witches have claws as an alternative of fingernails which they cover by carrying gloves, are bald which they cover by carrying wigs that give them rashes, have square toes with no toes which they cover by carrying smart sneakers, have a purple tinge of their pupils and have a strong sense of odor which they use to smell out kids. The subsequent day, the boy takes Daisy and a rope to go get some coaching accomplished at a grand corridor. As he walks there, he meets a gluttonous however pleasant boy named Bruno, who will get pulled away by his mom. He then goes into the grand corridor, pondering that he might be alone. As he is on the brink of practice Daisy, a bunch of witches led by their omnipotent chief, the Grand Excessive Witch, go into the grand corridor. The boy hides underneath the stage and discovers that the Grand Excessive Witch is planning to present the world's kids a potion, which might be utilized in confectionery merchandise that may remodel the youngsters into mice. The Grand Excessive Witch waits for Bruno to reach, for whom she gave a chocolate bar beforehand laced with the potion. After Bruno arrives, he turns right into a mouse and enters the vent, the place the boy and Daisy are hiding. The Grand Excessive Witch forcibly transforms the boy right into a mice earlier than they escape. Fleeing to the resort room, the place the boy and his grandmother are staying, they inform the grandmother of the witch's plan and uncover that the Grand Excessive Witch is staying within the resort room beneath them and that Daisy was as soon as an orphaned younger human lady named Mary was a mouse by a witch. He, Bruno, and Mary devise a plan to get a bottle of the potion in order that the grandmother can devise a treatment to show them again into kids. The plan is profitable, however, since she is unable to create a treatment, they as an alternative determine to place the potion right into a broth of pea soup which might be given to the witches throughout their dinner. All of the witches besides the Grand Excessive Witch, who realizes that she had met the grandmother earlier than as she was the witch that turned Alice right into a rooster, drink the soup. Whereas the mice steal the Grand Excessive Witch's room key, the witches all start turning into rats and chaos ensues. After she and the mice flee to the Grand Excessive Witch's room, the grandmother begins to gather all of the potions to destroy them. The Grand Excessive Witch finds the grandmother, and prepares to kill her. However, the mice intervene and trick the Grand Excessive Witch into swallowing her personal potion, reworking her right into a rat. They entice her in an ice bucket and forestall her from escaping. Earlier than they depart the room, the grandmother takes the Grand Excessive Witch's trunk full of cash and releases her cat Hades from its cage. As they shut the door, Hades assaults and kills her. After Bruno's dad and mom don't settle for him, he joins Mary, the boy, and the grandmother to go dwelling with the Grand Excessive Witch's trunk and develop into a household. Years later, older boy and his grandmother advise younger kids in opposition to the witches. Roald Dahl's The Witches, or just The Witches, is a 2020 darkish fantasy comedy movie directed by Robert Zemeckis and written by Zemeckis, Kenya Barris, and Guillermo del Toro. It's based mostly on the 1983 novel of the identical title by Roald Dahl and is the second feature-length adaptation of the novel, after the 1990 movie of the identical title directed by Nicholas Roeg. The movie stars Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, and Stanley Tucci, and is narrated by Chris Rock. The Witches was launched on HBO Max in America on October 22, 2020. Additionally, having a standard theatrical launch in some markets per week later. The movie obtained combined critiques from critics, who criticized its writing and deemed it inferior to Roeg's movie. Summaries: a younger boy and his grandmother have a run-in with a coven of witches and their chief. Reimagining Roald Dahl's beloved story for a contemporary viewers, Robert Zemeckis's visually progressive movie tells the darkly humorous and heartwarming story of a younger orphaned boy who, in late 1967, goes to dwell together with his loving grandma within the rural Alabama city of Demopolis. Because the boy and his grandmother encounter some deceptively glamorous however completely diabolical witches, she correctly whisks him away to a seaside resort. Regrettably, they arrive at exactly the identical time that the world's grand excessive witch has gathered her fellow cronies from across the globe undercover to perform her nefarious plans. Zemeckis is joined by a world-class crew of filmmakers, together with Alfonso Cuarón, Guillermo del Toro and Kenya Barris. The solid contains powerhouse performances from Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, Stanley Tucci, Kristen Chenoweth and Chris Rock, with newcomer Jazir Kadeen Bruno because the courageous younger hero. It could come as a shock, however, witches are actual. They dwell amongst us, disguised as odd people. They usually feed off worry. Now, whether or not he likes it or not, an harmless orphaned boy is about to find the stunning reality behind the demonic creatures, shortly after relocating to late 1960 Demopolis, Alabama, to dwell together with his variety grandmother. And earlier than lengthy, a hair-raising encounter with the supernatural jolts grandma into motion, forcing her to take her boy to an expensive seaside resort distant from dwelling to guard him. Sadly, the in any other case impeccable resort is rife with hazard, as a secret coven of modern witches is holding its annual convention in plain sight. Evidently their mighty chief, the scheming grand excessive witch of all of the world, has hatched a plan, and nobody is safe, especially kids. Can they escape from their clutches? Will they provide the evil witches a dose of their very own medication? The unique, The Witches, is a childhood basic that all of us grew up watching, and the setting and the precise witches themselves regarded approach higher again than in 1990 than these CGI creations look right this moment in 2021. Robert Zemeckis is a superb director and he does good right here, however like each huge movie right this moment it is overreliant on CGI impacts, and even with its mega price range it does not look nearly as good or as richly lovely because the darker unique outdated basic. Additionally, the actors have been a lot higher within the unique as was the Lodge, however as a brand new model as a enjoyable fantasy journey it is nonetheless an honest watch. Anne Hathaway is nice as the principal head witch, however once more obtained nothing on the scariness of Angelica Houston. The characters have modified to the solid of a black model, which was okay as a result of I preferred Chris Rock telling the story, and Octavia Spencer is actually good because the grandma who takes the lit. La boy to an enormous lovely lodge to flee a witch encounter, however find yourself proper in the course of a witch's assembly place. Stanley Tucci is okay, however felt very subdued and not enjoyable like Rowan Atkinson's basic half. The children are high quality and the CGI mice are cartoony wanting, however there may be some magic right here and the story is just about precisely the identical as the unique, however simply not accomplished as nice. Nonetheless, this replace is a enjoyable movie with first-rate performances and good cinematography. Nevertheless, it simply ain't on the extent of that unique basic. Individuals have to be smarter. Why do I say? Folks must be slightly smarter. As a result of it's a remake by Robert Zemeckis. I love Robert Zemeckis. We share a birthday and he is a fantastic storyteller. Enjoyable truth. Additionally, sharing a birthday with George Lucas. There was nothing incorrect with the unique. Nevertheless, know-how provides you slightly extra room to play with the execution of the storytelling. None the much less. Lots of the one-star scores have been just because the leads have been black. Critically, it was in contrast over 4 instances to a what if, a traditionally black movie was revised with an all-white solid. Which is extraordinarily demonstrative of their ignorance as a result of that has already been accomplished with lots of literature and black characters. In addition to folks stating it is a political remake, when nobody actually thinks that till you think about their very own insecurities of getting minorities in main roles. Anyway, I do not love Anne Hathaway. Her appearing was slightly a lot. However, that will have been how the director needed it performed. Nobody can actually recreate that Angelica Houston portrayal, however she does it in her personal approach, which is what an actress is meant to do. It is only a bit distracting from the story. Total a fantastic family movie. One particular person did say, it wasn't as scary as I remembered it as a child. Which I agree with, however you could not notice that worry as an grown-up. Seeing these toes, mouths and claws could also be extra of an impression for a kid, or it could have purposefully been made child-friendlier. As a result of I used to be 4-ish when the unique got here out and I could not sit via it, I keep in mind being terrified. That additionally will be the distinction between CGI and sensible results. Nonetheless a fantastic watch. Individuals who rated it poorly the place in search of an up-to-date remake without it being up-to-date. It is not a Transformer film, it is a Roald Dahl adaptation. I and lots of people can really feel a side of the story now with a lead character portrayed by folks of color. That is a tremendous remake, with some adjustments to the story. My children love the ebook. I've learned it to my daughter 5 instances no less than, needed to put my foot right down to learn one other. She liked the primary film and this one is even higher. Do not perceive in any respect why the score is so low. I hate to say it, however I believe it is due to the updates. This film has some variations. What remake does not? The massive variations are that the principal boy and grandma aren't white. Therefore the individuals who do not like this film, superb to me when white folks have so many points with characters not being white and mate perceive on the similar time why it is crucial that we do make films which can be extra various. This isn't set in Europe. It is set in 1960s America and that is about it. Besides the particular results are insanely good. The Grand Grasp Witch is really scary and my children have been so fearful of her it was nearly borderline for them. My son hid underneath his blanket at instances and my daughter needed to sit on my lap. For lots of components, they're 6 and 7. I completely adored this movie and thought it was an exquisite remake. I assumed it was higher than the primary, and the children loved it. They already requested to observe it tomorrow. Do not consider the dangerous reviews, all of them have horrible style. In some ways this film is superior to the unique and in any case, nearly as good as. It is simply barely completely different than the book. The film adopted the ebook precisely. This one made some adjustments, however they made an altogether fantastic movie and the children are going to adore it. My children are watching it proper now, really for the 3rd time since yesterday. It is that good. It is a new basic for teenagers and hopefully will get all of them into studying the books. A mediocre replace to a beloved kids' story that solely barely manages to interact its viewers. The Witches is a darkish fantasy movie based mostly on the novel of the identical title by Roald Dahl. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, again to the Future trilogy, Forrest Gump, and starring Anne Hathaway. It's a mediocre replace to a beloved kids' story that solely barely manages to interact its viewers. In 1968 in Alabama, the unnamed hero boy, Jazir Kadim Bruno, survives a automotive crash that kills each of his dad and mom and is distributed to dwell together with his maternal grandmother, Octavia Spencer. At some point when the two are out buying collectively, the hero boy encounters a witch who entices him with a snake and a few chocolate, however disappears when his grandmother calls out to him. Afterward, the grandmother tells the hero boy about how witches are very actual and that when they set their sights on a selected baby, they are going to by no means hand over pursuit till that baby is lifeless. Determined to keep away from her grandson from being killed, the grandmother and the hero boy take refuge in a excessive class resort, unaware that a big group of witches led by the Grand Excessive Witch, Anne Hathaway, are staying there as properly. Practically everybody I've met has learned no less than one story written by Roald Dahl. His darkish sense of humor and tongue-in-cheek wit nonetheless resonates strongly with many individuals right this moment, and most of this finally ends up being translated efficiently into cinematic type with movies like 1990's The Witches. That movie stays one of the crucial fashionable diversifications of Dahl's work, so it comes as a shock that this contemporary replace with seemingly higher know-how 30 years later might be so inferior as compared. What I consider made the 1990 movie particular was how energetic and uncooked the particular results have been due to the puppetry and animatronics offered by the Jim Henson firm. Every time you noticed a personality work together with a mouse or a freakishly ugly witch, you immediately obtained the sensation that there was one thing bodily there in entrance of them. With this movie, the CGI is so overabundant and unconvincing that it severed most reference to me as I watched actors discuss to an apparent inexperienced display screen underneath the pretense that one thing might be added later in post-production. This made the movie really feel soulless and sterile, and it consistently made me want I used to be watching the unique movie as an alternative. Fairly just a few gifted folks labored on this movie, like director Robert Zemeckis, who additionally co-wrote the script with Guillermo del Toro. This could have been a successful mixture, however as an alternative it appears nothing good got here from it. Not as soon as did I ever have that sense of surprise and fascination I've come to anticipate from watching a film made with the involvement of both of those two. Zemeckis, who directed the cult basic, Demise Turns Into Her, a movie famed for its spectacular visible results, as an alternative takes the straightforward route of overloading every scene with CGI and badly rendered animals, together with a really pretend-wanting cat. Moreover, Del Toro's signature fashion look is as if a combined bag right here, preserving that darkish fantasy tone, whereas additionally together with scenes that will be too scary for many younger kids. That is to not say the 1990 movie did not have its fair proportion of scary moments, however most of them have been transient, whereas this time the digital camera would typically linger on the fearsome appearances of the witches sufficient to burn their photographs into one's thoughts. One thing like this can be high quality for Del Toro's different movies geared toward adults, however seeing as that is imagined to be for teenagers it comes throughout as unnecessarily mean-spirited. The movie's one saving grace was Anne Hathaway's efficiency, because the grand excessive witch, nearly equaling Angelica Houston earlier than her, Hathaway brings a lot over-the-top insanity and eccentricism to her position that one cannot help however chortle at seeing her lose herself taking part in this cartoonishly evil character. She simply overshadows the remainder of the solid, which is not actually factor the extra I give it some thought. Whereas the entire different actors aren't horrible by any means, they only did not depart as a lot of an impression as their 1990 movie counterparts. Reasonably surprisingly, the movie is narrated by Chris Rock because the older hero boy, which made the movie really feel as if I used to be watching an episode of the sitcom, Everyone Hates Chris. Despite the fact that that did supply some gentle amusement, it nonetheless appeared like a weird inventive choice that made me overlook I used to be imagined to be watching a Roald Dahl story within the first place. In the long run, I simply do not see this movie being wherever close to as fondly remembered because the 1991. The actual fact that I'm able to recall a lot of the unique off the highest of my head regardless of having seen it so way back, whereas with this one I'm struggling to consider even one memorable scene goes to indicate which of the two has probably the most endurance. Roald Dahl relatively infamously hated almost all movie diversifications of his work, so it is arduous to say if he'd approve of this one. However, contemplating that it does precisely comply with sure components of the ebook extra intently than its earlier incarnation makes me suppose he would in all probability get pleasure from this another. Personally, I will stick to the 1990 movie, and so must you.